This is Mary Lewis at A Tiny Homestead, the podcast comprised entirely of conversations with homesteaders, cottage food producers, and crafters. Today I'm talking with Abby about her nomadic adventure of homesteading and her journey to becoming an herbalist. Before you try anything suggested in this podcast, do your research and never ingest anything unless you've talked to your doctor first. Good morning, Abby.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Oh,
So I was looking at your Facebook page, and
yes.
it looks like you've been kind of a nomad. So
Yes.
tell me about yourself and about how you've ended up where you are.
Yeah, so that's what I was excited to talk to you about. So my husband and I met in California 10 years ago. We were very young. Um, we stayed in California for about 6 months. That's where I was born in the Central Valley, and he's from Minnesota. So a long ways for him to be away from home, at a youngish age. And I wanted, to travel. And he said, I can ranch. And I'm like, okay. And so he said, you find a job and we'll move. So 6 months of being together, we moved to Montana. And we went and worked for the Gordon Cattle Company there in Chinook, Montana. And that was the largest spread of land that we had seen. And they had 30,000 acres on the Canadian border. And so we were there for like maybe 8 months. And it was the craziest thing that I had, been through. We were paid it was like $1,000 a month. So we had to hunt for our dinner. And the place had 2 privately stocked ponds. So we got to fish all the time, and it was just a really beautiful place to, start our career of moving around. And so yeah, we've just moved around from ranch to ranch. We've done some construction. He's built dairies for a living as well in Oregon. And we worked for my uncle on his hay farm, and they had 1,200 acres of premium Timothy and alfalfa that we would ship to California to the racehorses. And then that would get exported, you know, as well to Dubai and things like that. So I come from a family of farmers and painters, and that's just kind of what we've done is moved around.
Okay, so how old were you when you first started this?
Um, I think I was 19.
So you were a baby.
Yes. And he was 23.
Mhm.
So, yeah, but I'd always, I was in California and Oregon, and that's kind of where I grew up. And so that was really the only places that I had been, and I wanted to travel. And so once I found someone that said, yeah, let's go, that kind of started my addiction of moving. Um, and since then, we've ranched Oregon, Montana. The last big ranch that we were on was in Cody, Wyoming. We worked on Buffalo Bill's first homestead.
Fun.
Yeah, and that was 120,000 acres.
Wow.
Yes,
So when you say ranch, what is it? What exactly did you do?
cows, cows and hay. That's what mainly the ranching industry is you know you get hired as a ranch hand, and you go fence and you feed cows. If someone wants to give you the opportunity, then you get to learn how to um, you know birth them. And he learned his animal husbandry throughout the years, on different ranches and things like that. There's construction. There's just kind of everything on ranches. Going from working with premium hay crops to going to like Wyoming or Colorado and they just grow for the animals, it was kind of it became kind of frustrating because it's like you could do so much better and you could grow such a better crop if they had put fertilizer in or they had like done any crop rotation. There's been places that the same crop of Timothy had been in that field for 15 years, 20
Mhm.
years. It's like that's a little long. So
So both of you kind of had a paid apprenticeship all along.
exactly. And
That's that's fabulous.
it is. And that's where I got to learn how to homestead and garden on borrowed land.
Mhm.
So I started with chickens and
Everybody does.
yeah, um, chickens. And then I had met a wonderful gal in Oregon that, had done boar goats, and she has some top of the line bloodlines, and she shows them every once in a while. But so she helped me out with the goats. I don't like goats; they're not my favorite animals.
Mhm.
They get on everything, and they're annoying. So
They're devils. Yes, they're very pretty devils.
yes,
So you have one little one at home?
I do. Yep, he's 6 years old, and he's lived on a ranch his entire life.
So does he help out too? I bet he does.
Oh, he does. At the age of 3, he could tell you what type of irrigation was which.
Mhm.
He could tell you the process of putting up a crop, from watering to in the barn. He could tell you, the process of how that worked. And so now, I got to homestead on different properties. So we started in Oregon and I had chickens and I've had geese. Geese are probably my favorite out of the birds. Like, as far as like large fowl, they're really neat animals. I've had ducks. We've done rabbits. I've had quail. Quail will probably be what I buy when we like start our own homestead because the chickens are too much for me to just take care of and to butcher.
Mhm.
So quail are super easy and then they hatch out in 18 days.
Mhm.
So the turnaround is like it's a no-brainer. Even you could do quail and it would be easier to, for you to manage or your husband to manage, butchering them. You could butcher 3 and have them for dinner that night.
Yeah, we considered getting quail this past winter. We talked about it. And the more research I did into it, the more we decided not to because
Okay.
I kept reading horror stories about how they will kill themselves at any opportunity.
Yeah. I would do it anyways just to say that you've done it. And sometimes it works and sometimes it just doesn't for certain people. It just depends on how much work I feel like you want to put into it.
Mhm.
um, but the amount of birds that you could have per square foot, like it's crazy. You could just build all these coops that are a foot tall and have them in your garage,
Mhm.
and you could have 300 birds in there, and it wouldn't look like much, but
Yeah, we may revisit it, but this
yeah.
this particular year we decided we would wait.
Hmm.
So I'm really glad that you wanted to chat with me because one of the things that I say all the time is that you can homestead anywhere
Yes.
and and I feel like you've been doing exactly that. And I keep I keep getting into these discussions with people and they're like, "I live in the middle of the city in a loft apartment that's 300 square feet. How am I supposed to homestead?"
Hmm.
And I'm I have to think about it because it's a whole different way of doing it.
Yes.
But I ask if they've ever made cookies in from scratch in their tiny oven in their tiny loft apartment.
Mhm.
And invariably I get a few yeses and I say that's a homesteading skill. Baking
Mhm.
from scratch is a homesteading skill. Have you ever picked up, I don't know, yarn and knitting needles or a crochet hook and tried that? And some people have, and I say that's a homesteading school skill.
Mhm.
And so homesteading is more about making or cooking or growing things
Mhm.
sort of the way it was done 150 to 200 years ago. And I feel like people think that homesteading is prepping, and a lot of people think that prepping is insanity, and it's not.
No.
Prepping is being prepared for
Mhm.
things to happen. So I'm really glad that you are one of those people who has homesteaded
Mhm.
everywhere.
Yeah.
So on that note, where are you now? You're in southern Minnesota.
Yeah. So the deal with ranching and being a ranch hand is it is hit or miss whether you're going to find a good, couple of owners or managers, or if you're going to find bad ones. The owners of the Cody, Wyoming ranch, they were absentee owners, so they had managers. Terrible, terrible managers. The guy was just old and for some reason didn't like my husband because he knew more than the manager did about hay crops, and he was like, why aren't we disking this up and putting planting a new crop so you have
Mhm,
better yields for your animals.
mhm,
So yeah, that didn't go over so well, I guess, with but my husband has so many years of experience. He's like, well, I just felt like I could offer my expertise. They
yep,
didn't want that. So the same type of thing sort of happened again. And we found a bad rancher that we believed because we wanted, to get into a house. And that's the thing is like with ranch jobs, they always provide housing.
sure.
So we've always had housing provided. Well, we are moving to Missouri in 3 weeks because we are in an RV. And so I am homesteading ish in a campground.
Uh-huh.
And I've been learning how to be an herbalist for a year now. And so, that process is really nice because I may not have the animals right now, but now I have something else to fixate on. And herbalism has been the best thing for me, like here in Minnesota,
Mm,
because we have birch trees and everything. So the campground that I'm on now is 67 acres. And so I have free reign of that. And I just found chicken of the woods the other day. We went and picked a bunch of elm mushrooms. They're like oyster mushrooms.
yep,
And, and then the foraging, there's all kinds of herbs out there. So I am collecting herbs and drying them. And then, I put them in the bags and put them up in the cabinet. So when we go to Missouri, I can actually start making medicine. I would like to try and sell herbal cosmetics. Selling herbs or tinctures that are ingestible, I feel like it's too hard to get into that. Like, the laws and stuff, I just don't want to
I
deal with.
I do know. I make some essential oil blends, and
Mhm.
and I buy the essential oils from a reputable company, and then I make them into what I need them to be.
Mhm.
And I cannot market them very easily because I use one that is peppermint, lemon, and lavender for migraine headaches, and it doesn't end the headache, but it certainly takes the edge off.
Mhm.
I cannot legally say that because I haven't had it tested and proven by a lab. And it's so frustrating to me because a lot of the things that we use for headaches and colds and flu and the everyday things that bother us started out as herbs.
Mm-hmm.
It's so frustrating. I feel your pain.
It is. And, this year I have taken the time to I was like, oh, I want to do this. And then it would change and it would change and it would change. And I watch a lot of homesteading stuff on YouTube.
Mhm.
And so I would watch, just try and find different herbalists and things like that. And I figured out that I just want to teach people about it, and then they can make it on their own if they want. They
Yes.
can make this salve or they can make this tincture because it's so simple. But then I'm not selling it and potentially, harming someone. It's just teaching and then, giving out your disclaimer. Um, but I think that that's the path that I want to go down. So on YouTube, I don't know if you've heard of Justin Rhodes.
I have, yes. But
Yep.
tell me about him.
So Justin Rhodes, he lives in North Carolina, and he followed. Oh my gosh, I can't even think of his name right now. There's a guy. I will look it up in a moment, but he does a lot of permaculture, and he has 7 acres that is open land right now, and the rest of it is forest. And so what he's doing is he's pasturing his forest. And so in Missouri, I want to buy wooded land and, build our home there. And I want to pasture the forest because I want to document all of that
Mhm.
and teach people, and show people, what it's like and our story and how we do it. And then when we do that with sheep and pigs and, chickens, then we'll build a food forest. And I want it to be edible and medicinal plants. I think it would be cool to, have that all created and then invite the public out and do teaching seminars or, do an Airbnb and do a weekend of people get to stay in, bell tents or rendezvous tents, and they get to have the experience of learning survival skills and learning how to start a fire and cooking over the fire and, you know, just finding the basic herbs, like being able to identify yarrow and dandelions and, just simple things like that. And then teach them how to do fire cider. That's a very simple, fun activity that people can do and not feel like it's too complicated, I think.
Yeah, tell me about fire cider because I keep reading about it. It's not something that I've looked into or done.
Mhm.
What is it?
Okay, so with apple cider vinegar, it's like the alcohol in a tincture. Um, but it takes all the nutrients out of the plant material or the ginger that you put into it.
Mhm.
So in a fire cider, you put ginger, turmeric, onion, garlic, cinnamon. You could do clove, anything that you want, pretty much. I put spruce needles in there. I've done goldenrod. I've done pineapple. You just, are making a blend of herbs in apple cider vinegar that helps with keeping colds away. And then it also, I feel like when you take a shot of it in the morning, I feel like it gives you energy.
So does it boost your immune system? Is that part of the deal?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And that's where the ginger and the turmeric come in.
Uh-huh.
You would also add black peppercorns. So, the commercials of the CoQ10 or the turmeric with whatever with quinol, I think they say all that is turmeric and black pepper. So the black pepper with turmeric boosts the nutrition value, or so you can absorb it better.
Okay.
And it's super simple. It's like, okay, and they're selling this and saying, oh, this is the best supplement you could take, and it's like, okay, well, that's just turmeric and black pepper. So the fire
In a
starter,
it's in a way that you can stand to ingest it.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And you can make it taste, so many different ways. Like, if you put pineapple in it, wow, the flavor is it's really good. And I feel like it's a little sweeter for
Mhm.
people that don't like apple cider vinegar, because, that could be very bitter.
Yeah.
So,
So how much do you drink a day?
you would just do like a smaller shot glass of it once a day. And
So maybe an ounce or two?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, an ounce or two. And you would start that, you would start your process of, making your fire cider right about now. It
Mhm.
takes about 6 to 8 weeks to sit and make everything, you know.
Let everything get happy together.
Yep,
Mm.
exactly. And then you just, start taking that, every day, every other day. So then you're trying to, prevent colds, and with this last winter, I told my husband, I was like, I'm not going to buy any store-bought medicine unless it's like really needed. If I absolutely fail on, with the herbs that I have, with trying to prevent or help us from being sick, then we'll go and buy store-bought medicine. And I only had to buy store-bought medicine once or twice because my son was super sick, and that didn't even work. We took him to the doctor, and they're like, well, we can't do anything. And I'm like, okay, great. So I just went home and kept trying, the different herbs that I had, making them tea, yarrow tea. Yarrow reduces fevers. I've had it actually reduce his fever within an hour, and that was crazy. So
So did you boil it in water and have him drink it? How did you get the benefit from the RO? How do you do that?
so you would put a teaspoon of crushed up yarrow. You could do it in one of your tea strainers, the tea bag
Yeah,
metal.
dried or fresh or both?
Dried, you can
Either.
do both.
Okay.
And then you got to add a lot of honey because yarrow is a bitter,
Yeah.
and dry
Are you using the blooms or the leaves or the stems or all of it?
I use all of it.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
So it's very bitter. So you have to, for kids, it's hard. It's hard for me to try and make medicine palatable for him to take, because he's taken it and now he's like, no, I'm not going to do that because I know what that tastes like.
Yeah.
So, and he's still sick, so he doesn't understand, like, just do it because it's going to help you. So,
And the ick is temporary, yes.
yeah. But for an adult, it's, you just chug it down, sip
Mhm.
on it and deal with it, add a bunch of honey, that type of thing. Yarrow is also good dried as a sepsis powder.
Okay.
So, or you could do it as a poultice, which is, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but you chew up the leaves if you're out in the woods, if you get cut or something, and you put it on there and it stops the bleeding.
Okay. Back to the sepsis thing that you said. Explain
Mhm.
that, because I know what sepsis is, but I'm pretty sure not everybody does.
So it's like, so in the animal industry, we have the quick clot powder, and that stops bleeding of, a wound.
Mhm.
Or like when we dock tails on puppies, you have to use something to stop the bleeding.
Yes.
So if you dry the head of the leaf or of the flower, you would grind it up and then you just put it in a little container, and you take a pinch and you can put that on, a little cut or a bigger gash if you needed to,
Hmm.
and that would stop the bleeding. Back in the day, I don't know how to pronounce the actual name of it, but they used it in the military and they would pack bullet wounds
Hmm.
with yarrow.
Okay.
So I just think it's really fascinating, all the history of all these herbs, and there's bitters and there's calming herbs and there's warming and there's cooling, and once you really dive into the research of like the things that these herbs can do, it's fascinating. um, because even like 20 years ago, pharmacists were learning about herbs as well,
Hmm.
and now they don't, but they
Yes,
learned about it at one time.
it's unfortunate that we don't still do some of it that way.
Yeah.
Um, we have yarrow that grows wild on our property, and
Hmm.
I've been busy with moving here 3 years ago and trying to find my feet
Hmm.
because moving from in town to over 3 acres was a brand new experience for me. And I saw these really pretty plants with these really interesting stems and leaves, and then they bloomed white and pink, and I had to look it up, and I was like, yarrow, it's an herb. I need to look into that.
Hmm.
I still need to look into it, but now I know why I need to look into it. So thank you for that.
Yes, definitely. And you probably have bee balm out there.
We don't have any on our property.
Oh,
I'm so sad. I'm gonna try. I've tried to get it going, but it's just
mhm.
not taking. We've also been in droughts for the last 3 summers,
Yeah.
which has not helped. We have bee balm that grows near us. We have coneflower, which is echinacea, which I know is good also.
Yes.
So I have to get some echinacea and some bee balm happening here this coming spring because it's driving me crazy that it grows wild everywhere, but it will not grow on my property for some reason.
Yeah, that is, as I've gone through Minnesota, we have family that's up near Duluth, and we're, south now. And looking at, the different trees and the different plants and herbs that grow in different regions of the state is very fascinating. We don't have birch up here, which
Mhm,
birch is another very medicinal tree. Um, if you strip the bark down, like from a log,
mhm,
it's red. It's a dark red orange color. Well, if you were to put that in a tincture, like that, the very last part of the bark, that could be used as aspirin or
mhm.
ibuprofen.
Yep.
And then you could also tap a birch tree in the spring and get birch water. So if you're out in the wild, you don't have water, you could tap a birch tree and drink that, and that would sustain you.
Mhm,
So there's so many, trees and plants. I love it. And now I'm starting to like post more about what I'm doing with the herbalism. And I'm starting to have people message me, say, hey, I have this going on. Do you have any idea what herbs could help it? And I'm like,
You're
this
a
is
wise you're a
insane.
wise woman.
Yeah,
You've become a wise woman. This is fantastic.
it is. And I just had that happen yesterday. And this woman uh, she has something major going on. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, you're seriously asking me this right now? Okay, I will do my research, and see if I can help you. So it's been fun. Someday I will go and become a certified herbalist. So then I can just say that I'm a certified herbalist. But I think it's going to be a lifetime of research.
I think you are perpetually curious, and I am too. So this is really exciting talking with you.
Yeah.
I just got some. Oh, I'm trying to think of the name of it. Touch me not is the plant, but that's not jewelweed. I just got some jewelweed from a neighbor and put that in water, boiled it down, and then no, I'm sorry, in almond oil, sweet almond oil,
Hmm.
and boiled it for like an hour or so. Boiled it and then simmered it. And I have a quart of jewelweed oil sitting in a dark cabinet right now, ready to be made into a salve. And I don't know if you know about jewelweed, but it is used to take the poison ivy rash down. It,
Yes.
it helps with that, and it helps with poison oak and I think poison sumac maybe.
Okay.
And my son actually used some this summer because he got stung by a wasp, and he came in the house. He's 21, so he was like, I got bit, basically. And he said, "Where's that jewelweed salve?" And I said, "On the counter." And he grabbed it and he put some on it. Within seconds, he said it doesn't burn anymore. So it's also good for bee stings and mosquito bites and black fly bites. It's fabulous. And jewelweed grows all over Minnesota when we're not in a drought because it needs to have its feet wet.
Got it.
So I'm right there with you on different herbs, I guess.
But I just feel like that's on the side of what people think prepping is and how they feel about it because of the pandemic.
Mhm.
They're like, oh, we have to prep because there's no toilet paper, or there's no food. And
Yeah.
I feel like, in the beginning of the pandemic, there was just so much politics and it was like, okay. But now looking back on it, I think it was great because it pulled all these homesteaders out of the woodworks and they're on YouTube.
Mhm.
Roots and Refuge Farm, Jess and her husband and her kids, they have a beautiful place in South Carolina now. They moved from Arkansas, and she has a gorgeous, like, garden. It's a she calls it a garden belt, and it goes like down her driveway. She has two giant high tunnels, and everything she does with um, work, like it's a work of art. So she has in-ground plants, she has raised beds, she has the high tunnels. So she's teaching about different ways to garden. And then, you could garden vertically and you
We
could,
do. We do
yeah,
garden vertically.
yeah. And that's what people could do, in town. I'm
Mhm.
always driving, I'm in town and I'm like, oh, look at that lawn. You could turn that entire lawn into garden space.
Mhm.
You know, there's a gentleman in Florida, and again, I don't know what his name is. I haven't watched him in a while, but he raises trees, and he has a food forest, and he has banana trees out there. It's just amazing. And then he has a friend that is sort of like a nomad as well, and he goes to Florida in the winter, and he gardens his mom's and his ex-wife's front yard, and then he sells that at the farmers market in the wintertime. And the entire yard is dug up and is all in plants. So he has sweet potatoes and just everything that you can imagine. And then in the summer, he goes back to Maine and he lives in a rendezvous tent and he gardens out there and he has a giant food forest that he works on with the owner of the property. So there's so many people that are now sharing their knowledge, and it's amazing because everyone's done the hard work. All we have to do is just go watch it and learn. They
Yeah.
videoed, and even like the off-grid people, there's you could learn how to off-grid, in a couple of weeks by just watching YouTube and what everyone else has done, and they're sharing their experience and what's worked and what hasn't worked. So,
Of course. Um, I have a couple of things about the pandemic. Number one, it was the quietest apocalypse ever.
mm,
Could not believe how quickly everybody cocooned and dove into themselves because there was nothing to distract them. And that's part of what you're getting at, is that people had time to look at what they were doing and change it, or get more into what they were doing and share it.
Yes.
We moved partly because of the pandemic. We lived in town, Jordan, Minnesota,
Okay.
and our neighbors were very close, and it was so hard being in town and being surrounded by people, but not being able to be near people.
Yes.
And we had already wanted to move further out. So that was a big part of why we moved. It was like, okay, well, we're going to be in this for a while. Where do we want to be? And how do we make that happen?
Mm-hmm.
And regarding turning a yard into a garden, we did exactly that where we used to live. Our entire backyard was vegetables and herbs and rhubarb and flowers.
Mm-hmm.
And when we first ripped it up to put things in, our neighbors thought we were nuts. They
I
they
love
did not they did not understand, and they weren't mean about it, but I know they didn't understand.
that. Mm-hmm.
And that summer, after we had planted cucumbers and tomatoes and herbs, and the rhubarb was already there, it was a huge established patch, which I loved. We went to our neighbors and gave them bags of cucumbers and tomatoes. And once they tasted them, they completely understood what we were doing and asked if we were going to continue to do it.
Oh.
So I think that inherently people are afraid of things that they don't understand
Mm-hmm.
as a general rule. And the ones who step beyond that and try to get an understanding and a knowledge of the thing that scares them are the ones that are the pioneers. They're the ones that say, "Okay, yes, it's scary, but let's figure it out."
Yes, definitely.
So I think the pandemic opened up a lot of opportunities for a lot of people.
Yes, it did. You know, the other movement that happened during the pandemic was people started selling their homes and moving in RVs and traveling.
Mhm.
A lot of people went to Florida because Florida had whatever, going on that people liked. But yeah, I thought that was great because we used to RV before RVing was cool. And now people are raising children and they're homesteading sort of by homeschooling and kind of going back to the basics of like what makes you happy, like what are we doing. You're just living and working and that's all you do. So I think it's neat that there are people that decided to go and like show their kids the world, because that's what we've done. Like our kid's probably going to be to 25 states by the time he's 18 with the rate that we that we're
Mhm.
going. But so I think that that's really neat that people are starting to like homeschool, and the old ways they're coming back, which is nice to see because I'm not looked at like I'm the weirdo or
Yes, I do know. I really, really do feel your pain on that one too. When we told our neighbors that we were going to be moving, the reaction was the same with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Utter shock, like a sad face, and then a big smile, and we're so happy for you.
Mm.
Because we had talked about it with them for years, that
Mm-hmm.
when we had the opportunity to go, we were going, and I don't think anyone believed it.
Got it.
And so I had one of my neighbors who was a friend cry when I told her, and I was like, "Please don't cry. Please don't cry. We're not leaving the state. We're gonna be here."
Yeah.
And she was like, "Yeah, but," and I said, "No, no, no, no. I told you. I told you years ago." She's like, "I know, but," and I said, "No,
Yeah.
stop, stop, please stop." She's like, "I'm really, really happy for you. I'm really sad for me." I said,
Mhm.
"Okay, I can live with that. You can come visit anytime you want."
That's
So, yeah, it's really hard, and it was also bizarre because the only time I've made a big move like this was moving from one state to another state far away. And
Okay.
so we're only maybe half an hour from where we used to live. So we still go to where we used to live and we
Mhm.
still shop at the same market sometimes and we go visit friends there. And when we drive by the old place, I'm like, I cannot believe we lived there. It just doesn't
Mhm.
seem possible that we lived there.
Yeah.
But
I
anyway,
agree.
getting far afield again here because we've been talking for 40 minutes and now I'm starting to ramble. Um, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. I think I'm probably going to name this episode the Nomadic Homesteader because
Okay.
it's what you've been doing. I think that would be
It
great.
is definitely. I think being able to homestead and learn how to garden on borrowed land, we can buy our own, and I can say, okay, I'm going to have these animals, and I already know how to do it. So I don't have to do the trial and error for 2 years like some
Like
other
we
people
are.
may. Yeah. Yep. And I can say, this is what I want. And now I have the vision of teaching others, and instead of like trying to sell products, I'm going to sell my herbal cosmetics and go down that road. But I'm going to teach herbalism instead of like try and sell products that are ingestible and things like that, because knowledge is power. And I think everybody needs to go out in the woods and just stop and look and see what food is out there, because there is food out there. And the mushrooms are amazing. And once you learn how to forage for mushrooms, you can actually smell them when you walk near a mushroom. You can smell it on the
Uh-huh.
ground or on the tree. And I think that is so empowering to say, I smelled that, or I knew it was going to be here because I had a feeling. So, but yes, I appreciate you taking the time to consider having me on your podcast.
I am so glad I did because this was really interesting and I was desperate to talk to someone who was into something that I hadn't talked to someone about before. So this is great. Um, Thank you so much, Abby. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, Mary, thank you. And I hope that you have a great gardening and a homesteading year next year.
Same to you, ma'am. Have a
All
great
right.
day.
Thanks. You too. Bye.
Bye.